All right, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties.
We're just trying to see how well people can adjust to things not happening on time.
Oh, okay, so it was intentional.
Oh yes, it was to test the audience to see how they keep it under control.
Yeah, how to stay regulated, as you would say.
And the cool thing was that they couldn't see how dysregulated we were. So,
that's true. Yeah.
We have it's all fine oiled machine and
yeah, and we have Kaylee over here. Kaylee's like, it's okay, everything's good. she's our buffer, isn't she?
Yeah, plans always go as intended.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for joining. Comment below. Let us know where you're watching from and how you are doing. And Doug, I was thinking about it this past week as far as we really want to get people commenting and interacting with us. And I thought to myself, just Tyler, hello? But I thought to myself, like, you're a therapist, and people that are watching have access to a therapist to ask any question that they would like to you. And so I just want to encourage you guys that you have access to ask a professional any questions about mental health or anything that you're going through. And so I think that that's I don't see that a lot online. And so I just want to say how blessed that we are that you're here and taking questions. And so take advantage of this, guys. We're streaming on our YouTube channel, which is the Resilient Purpose Podcast, and then also on Facebook. And so if
see someone's calling right
I can't hear it. Yeah, so as far as questions, guys, like anything that you have questions about therapy, if you have questions about anxiety or regulation or anything like that, or man, our phones are ringing off hook right now.
Favorite movie.
Yeah, and so and also too, we have Kaylee on looking at messages as well. And so if you don't feel comfortable commenting something, direct message us on YouTube or direct message us on the platform that you're watching on, and we'd love to get to some of your questions. And so first thing is, Doug, this morning you were talking about, you had a meeting and you were talking about hitting reset. And so kind of to give some filler right now, let's talk about what it means to hitting reset. What are you learning and what is coming up?
So we are working, actually, it has a lot to do with a group that we're filming Wednesday with, which is the Original Strength group. They're out of North Carolina, Tim Anderson, Danny Almeida. They have a concept out there in their program called Pressing Reset. And the idea behind that is much like a computer is kind of on the fritz, and what do they always tell you to do is power it off and power it back on, basically that reset button. And so it works really well physically. And some of you guys out there in the audience might be familiar with them, but by pressing their reset, it has allowed them to kind of communicate to their nervous system, to their body and brain that they're safe, that they're in a good place, they're regulated. And so then it like frees up their body to move better, perform better, physically. But there's also a component that I've been recognizing is that reset also applies for our ability to reset from a stressful situation. So we're stressed, we're not feeling good. And I always, everybody always hears me talk about regulating and staying regulated. This reset, this resilient reset, performs that job. So I was working with staff from my school-based programs, one of the school-based programs in Warren, and how, as they run a mental health day treatment program, is incorporating this resilient reset into their programming. Is that, if we can help kids learn how to stay regulated, stay in balance, and I'll tell you what, the better we move, the better we feel, the better we function. I kind of pose this question to them. Think about a day where you were not feeling physically well, like maybe you're tense, or maybe you're just aching all over, and your body's just not feeling well. How happy are you in those moments? How curious to learn are you in those moments?
Yeah.
How much are you wanting to get up and go do stuff? You're not. And so that impacts our mental health. And I'll tell you what, when I first started at Life on Purpose, I started out as doing therapy, and many of the adults, especially the adults that I worked with, were experiencing so much physical pain. They were just could barely move, could just feel physical pain all the time. And of course they were depressed and anxious and, all these mental health symptoms were really intensifying.
Yeah.
And so I think there's this real feedback loop where it's like when you're emotionally feeling bad, you physically feel bad. And when you physically feel bad, you emotionally feel bad. And you're cycling all this bad feelings, throughout that whole, and so it's really hard for you to, function well and to perform like you would like to perform. It's hard for you to concentrate at school. It's hard for you to focus and be productive at work. It's hard for you to focus and be productive in your relationships. And so by doing this and incorporating these physical and developmentally relevant movements in your body. So we talk about diaphragmatic breathing, head movements, and rolling and rocking and crawling, and these are this is a developmental sequence that we learned as kids, as babies, and so tapping into the things that were really beneficial for us when we were just little babies. These aren't things that stop being beneficial to us. We just stop doing those things. We stop moving. Think about when you were like a little munchkin and you were running all over the place and your parents were chasing you everywhere, and maybe to their stress level going up, but that's all we wanted to do was move. And now we're in such sedentary lives where we just sit and do nothing. We just sit in front of a computer and so that's not good for our body. And so if it's not good for our body, then it's eventually going to connect to not being good for our mental health. And so we have to install movement in our life. And I think it can be used very well I think it's the foundation to a good mental health. If we can use this reset, it'll allow for us to have better access to the parts of the brain that need to do the work to resolve trauma, to work on our anxiety and stress. And so that it's a program in development, and I'm excited about it. And so we're starting to kind of bring it to life.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, especially when you had said when we're not regulated or like even hitting reset, how many times that, especially for kids, but how many times in our lives where when we're not regulated, we're very reactive people. We're very anything, there's times where I get very irritable. And sometimes what I've had to learn is tell my dad or tell people that are close to me saying, hey, I'm really irritable right now. I don't know why, but just give me a minute. Like even last night with my girlfriend, I was like, I'll call you back. I need to lay down and just kind of think and kind of cool down, because, Doug, too, we will often say things that we don't necessarily mean when we're very reactive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Cause it's more unconsciously driven. It's more we have these templates. I mean, you can kind of there are certain things we say that are pretty predictable. You're going to hear something from somebody. They typically react to these situations in predictable ways. Yeah. That's because they're really templates. They're automatic reactions. By the time information gets to our thinking brain where we think things out, we've already reacted. I give the example of your brain's processing information. You put your hand on a hot stove, your brain pulls your hand away well before you even realize you burnt your hand.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want your thinking brain to take over and go, gosh, that does feel hot. I wonder, what should I do? Should I take it off? Should I turn the heat off? You don't want to be trying to figure that out. So much of the time in our life, we're very reactive. We react quickly to things that are in our environment, thinking about if you get cut off in traffic, you're not sitting there, when you're, giving somebody the finger or cussing at them in your car. You're not thinking, hey, I think the best choice of option is to stick up my middle finger. No, it is.
Because it feels personal when we do react. So from a professional standpoint, why are we reacting the way that we're doing? Is it because there's certain parts in the brain where we're because we're not regulated, we're not using a part of the brain for critical thinking. It's just the lower, and it's just flipping someone off. Sometimes when I'm behind someone, it becomes so personal to me and I get so upset. And it's what is our brain trying to do when we're reacting like that? Is it trying to project something where we can get energy out of us? What is it doing?
So the car example, the brain's number one job is to survive. So it's to stay alive.
Yeah.
And so it is constantly surveying the world for threat. And it's threat of all kinds. It's not, the only threats the threats in the world are not just being chased by a tiger or, whatever. But so, for example, like you're driving in traffic and then someone cuts you off. That the brain's interpreting that as a threat. So when we feel threatened, we engage in fight or flight. So we're fighting by yelling and cussing, even though they can't hear us, or slamming on the horn because we're trying to fight back at this threat.
Yeah.
That happens all before our thinking brain can figure out and go, oh, you're fine, you're safe, you haven't crashed yet, you're not in danger anymore, so you don't have to fight anymore. And so, and then you're driving away going, wow, like I really shouldn't have acted that way. That was really, I really lost it there. Yeah. And you're wondering, why did I lose it? Why did I go through that?
Yeah.
It's because your lower brain took over and thought that you're in a threatening situation, and so this is how you need to survive. And so when it does that, we often do things that we regret. We often do things that we are not proud of, not happy about. Now, the better we can learn how to stay regulated, the better we can develop and become tolerant to stress, the easier those things in the world become. We become less reactive to things. So the more tolerance we build in stress, the better we're able to handle things that are not necessarily challenging. So
yeah. We actually have Kaylee's husband, Andy, that had wrote into us. But before we get to Andy, we actually have Hussein that commented.
Oh, okay.
So Hussein had a comment here when we were talking. What's a good exercise to improve your reactionary reflex to better control that impulse?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's doing things that are going to be regulating for your more reactive systems. So you're building some. The better you can stay regulated overall, the less reactive you're going to be. So what typically happens is if you stay in these kind of low levels of stress all the time, then little things will kind of, like we talking about having like a sensitized stress response system where easy little things set you off and you become overreactive to things. So the more you regulate throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, the more control of your impulses you're gonna be, because you stay at a more regulated, calm kind of way. So things like and really regulating really reflects back to early things that were rocking, running, movement, anything that creates this kind of rhythmic type activity. So going for walks, deep breathing, the reset that I'm talking about, just being able to, put your body and brain in balance. So doing things that are calming. And so that might be meditation for you. That might be listening to music that you find soothing.
That's what I was going to ask. Something like this. Wait, of course, right at the end of it goes down. But there's some music that I listen to at night where it's very like, it's like dun 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 dun, and it's very rhythmic.
And everything's different for everybody. So some people, like there's a client that I work with that really needs to physically exert herself. So we've actually regulated through arm wrestling.
Really?
Because it was like I needed that physical. So like sometimes one of the activities we do is like
right now,
right? Wall pushes. So you get them on the wall and you try to push the wall down, and so you exert yourself. It's similar to like progressive muscle relaxation. So you tense yourself for a period of time and then relax. Tense yourself for a period of time and then relax. Some people get a lot of regulation from going for runs. Now I can't stand running because I have bad knees, so that doesn't fit for me. So I would never, you have to figure out what works for you. Now, like going back to music, there was a situation that happened at work years ago where the day before, I was asking a supervisor of mine to help me out. I had two conflicting things and I needed help, and so the one thing that she was going to help on, that person was late. The person that was going to drop a kid off to be transported home, and that person was late. And so the supervisor, who needed to get home for whatever reason, was really upset and having a big problem with that because it was delaying her schedule. But I had to do this one thing and I couldn't get out of it. Well, anyways, the next day, her supervisor like came in and said, we're gonna talk about this. This was uncalled for. I'm gonna talk, and this was in the morning, and she wanted to talk at like noon. So can you imagine how, like, if someone came in and said, we're gonna talk about how you did something that we didn't like, but we're not gonna talk about it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what? You're gonna like do that, and then you're gonna let me sit on it? So I actually had to go for a drive, and I blasted Linkin Park, and I just had to like jam. And there was this one song where he like screams, "Shut up when I'm talking to you." I just had to do that because I was like, I just want to scream at the top of my lungs because I'm so angry right now.
That's true. Yeah.
And then that allowed me. It was just sometimes what we think might not be regulating or actually regulating. So you got to find, you know, your balance. But exercise, movement. I think moving. Anytime you walk and talk, anything, anything, you know, doing exercise certainly is always going to be helpful. Sometimes it might be, I just need to go shoot hoops.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or
pretty much, I mean, you're just saying anything with movement. So like today in Marietta, Ohio, it is a beautiful day outside.
Go for
and
a
I think
walk.
after this live stream, I might just go outside just to get some sun, get some rays.
Being
and just
outside
to
in
feel
general would be good, even if you're
Yeah.
not moving outside, but being out in the sun and doing those things.
Absolutely.
Sunscreen, SP40. Or whatever, but.
Well, Hussein, thank you for that comment. If you have anything else, let us know. Do you listen to music? What are some things? Did you connect with anything that Doug had said as far as exercises? And so, oh, wait, we got to put this up. This is Doug's wife. So Janie says, Lainey says, Dad makes me do wall push-ups all the time. I do them when I feel mad and they make me feel better.
Good job, Lainey. That's awesome.
So do you mind taking us through that? So how did you come up with that with her?
Well, so it actually, one of the things we do is she'll get really, you know, if she's in like a stressed out place, she'll like, I'll hold my hands up and I'm just like, try to push me over. And so she'll like, and try to push me over. And then occasionally I throw myself back, but on the bed and she put, so it's just, it kind of is like a fun way to do progressive muscle relaxation rather than just saying, hey, just, you know, squeeze your fists or whatever. And, you know, doing things like that. So
is that why, like, when kids, like, I would do this when I was younger, I would just sit there and just get real tense and like, is that because you're trying, what is that?
You have all this kind of like pent up stress and adrenaline, you know, like when you're stressed, you're getting adrenaline shooting through your brain and body. And so that's, you know, and so relaxing is doing something with that adrenaline and things like that. So, so Lainey really responds to those because, you know, if she's in a temper tantrum or something like that, you know, for whatever reason, she's, you know, expressing that. And so you'll see it. She calms right down and then things change and she's, you know, able to do that. I have tried to get my kids to do a lot of those things, you know, try to practice what I preach. But
would you say, when I was little, I always wanted a punching bag. Would you say like a punching bag would be good too? To kind of like for if you had a son or had like a male that was struggling with anger issues to say, hey, why don't we take 10 minutes and you get out and punch the punching bag? Or
it can be. The only thing I would be careful about is when you're trying to be aggressive over feelings. Like I don't want to pair an association between aggression and like what you're mad about. So like the idea is that, okay, someone makes me mad, so I'm going to visualize her on, you know, on this person on the punching bag and punch, you know, the punching bag. I would just be careful. I mean, yes, it would do the physical aspect of it. I would just be careful that you're not going to generalize that idea that when I'm stressed, I hit things. You know, I would want that to be kind of like, that's how they, you know, do that, that it doesn't translate to other aspects.
I am curious about that. How would that translate? So if I, as a kid, and my parents were having me go to that punching bag a lot, they didn't, but if let's say that they did, when you mean an association, what is that? So that means when I get older, I'm going to pair like hitting something with that emotion, or what does that mean when you're talking about that?
Yeah. So think about, so we have like these, so whenever we engage in something, we have neural activity, and these neural activities are often co-occurring. So you have like, for example, that's how we learn language. You have co-occurring neural activity from stimuli in the environment. So I have a visual of a dog, and then my mom says dog, And so the co-occurring auditory neural activity and the visual neural activity puts that together, and my brain associates any furry thing as a dog. And then so the next time, and you keep repeating that association, that's how I learn language and things like that. So the brain is always making associations, so it learns how to automatically respond and react to situations. And so if I create, every time I'm angry at somebody, I go hit things, you know, I would just want to make sure that that association is I only hit the punching bag. It's not that I always deal with my emotions through aggression. You know, I want people to kind of, you know, or then if I start punching the punching bag and it makes me angrier, that wouldn't be healthy either. You know, you want to make sure that it's calming as well. So, you know, so it just depends on what that experience. I would just be careful because it does involve being aggressive, but it can definitely be helpful because you're doing, you know, what I would say is you get into boxing and punching the punching bag daily, not always in response to to being mad at
balance. Again, that's extreme.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not, I only, you know, so by boxing and engaging in that type of activity on a regular basis, you are regulating yourself. You know, you're creating some good activity that's very beneficial for your brain and body and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I've been meaning to do this, but there's like 5 songs that I have for our live stream. And so it's the same 5 songs I keep going back and forth. So whenever you hear this music, you might think of live stream, like, oh man.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So,
it's the same songs.
I'm from Connecticut. And so we grew up on the Hartford Whalers. So any hockey fans out there, and the song for the Hartford Whalers was the Brass Bonanza. Dun, 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 dun. And it's just really like iconic kind of song. So anytime I hear that, it just brings me back to Hartford Whaler hockey games, you know?
Yeah.
And so think about like things trigger memories, right? So things trigger, you know, a really fun time, you know, in life, or it can trigger a bad time. So those are all,
that's also fascinating to me too. And so we're going to get to more comments. Again, thank you guys for the comments. Keep them coming. We have some people watching, and so don't be shy. Comment below. We'd love to hear what your thoughts or any questions that you have. And so let's see if we can bring Andy up here. All right. Andy says, I agree it's a vicious battle to function throughout the day until you find how to cope. Thanks for bringing that to light. Regulation and reset. I had to reset first, then learn to regulate again afterwards. Ironic enough, all the small things too. All the small things bothered me rather than the big ones. Thanks for all you guys do. Well, thank you, Andy.
I kind of like equate it to be like, you know, if you put out a fire and if you don't make sure that it's completely out, you kind of have that low level of kindling. So then if you throw something else on the fire, it flames back up. Yeah. So oftentimes we might kind of get ourselves, we're not completely in balance. We have kind of a low level stress. Stress air, you know. So it can kind of make us more inflamed pretty easily. So,
and so guys, we're going to go to what we call I'm calling it the reaction segment, where we're going to go through some Instagram quotes and stuff like that. Again, as you guys are watching, drop a comment below wherever you're watching from, if it's on YouTube or Facebook. And so, Doug, right now we're going to bring one up. These, again, are quotes from Instagram. And so this one is interesting, Doug, and I would like to get your reaction to it right now. So, the way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice.
Yeah. Well, I once, I forgot the guy's name. He's a neurobiologist, and he kind of talked about how like we come into this world like a empty iPod. So like you buy an iPod, like, I don't know, people probably don't even know what an iPod is anymore now that everybody's just using phones. Yeah. But if you went into the Apple store and grabbed the iPod, hey, Apple, you want to sponsor? But give us a call. But you buy the iPod and you walk out the store. If you hit play, what would happen? If you hit play to an Apple iPad, what would happen?
I don't know, whatever you
Nothing,
put in it.
right? You have to put something in there,
you have
right?
to put something in there, yeah.
And so he kind of talked about how your first 6 or 7 years of life is all programming. So it's everything, all that 7 years is everything that we, put into that child is programming on how they view themselves, how they view others, how they view the world. It's how they learn about relationships. I mean, it's basic in our terms, when we talk about it, it's the brain is organizing it in such a way. So if I am always talking to them in, say, negative ways, unloving ways, very chaotic kind of ways, then I am programming they will reflect their life. They will reflect the life they experience. So if I am I'm basically shaping their identity by how I speak to them, So if I give them, if I'm encouraging, if I express to them that I believe in them and I believe that they can do anything they want. And if I share love, and I express love to them, then, I am shaping their identity to be, a valued, worthy person, a person of courage and being able to face this world. I need to be encouraged. And that's when we talked about last week about obedience, and it's all about like people kind of see it like, oh, they just they can't talk back or challenge or question. It's like, no, I want people to learn. I'm trying to shape their identity so that when they face that world, they're ready to take on those challenges. And if I control them and I don't allow them to think freely, to learn how to be their own person, then I hamper that. I make them more vulnerable to that scary world we live in.
Well, and even you were just talking about association. So as far as with my story, like I have a lot of, I've been in therapy since December 2019, and it's been great. And one of the things that I struggled with is there's certain aspects in my life where whenever I would go through, a certain type of emotion, or I would like maybe sleep in, or I was tired a lot as a kid, I would be told a lot and shamed a lot. And as far as doing those things, no one really understanding why I was the way that I was. And so in terms of you talking about association, could there even be times where the way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice? Whenever I feel that emotion, I then hear my caretaker's voice saying, wow, Tyler, like this shaming voice. And through therapy,
so you could also be triggered by that tone of voice. So if they gave you the same tone, like, Tyler.
Yes. That's
like,
true.
So anytime someone's like sighing, you're like, like you're worked up and
dang it. I never thought about that, Doug. That's so true. Yes. We even talk too, where it's like if you were bullied and people kind of, I don't know, when you get older and people look at you a certain way, you get triggered and you think, do you see how they looked at me? It's like, what? They didn't. Right. That's so true.
The brain doesn't need a perfect match. It needs a good enough match. It's a term coined by a friend of mine, Paul Baker, is a neuroscientist, and he talked about that the brain doesn't need a perfect match, because if we looked for a perfect match, we would overwhelm our brain so much. So we're just looking for things that are similar, and then it helps us work more efficiently in those situations. But we often misread things. So, and that's the perfect example. So if if I'm here talking, we're just having a conversation, I'm like, yeah, Tyler. And I kind of like sigh like that, and you're like, what's your problem? And I'll be like, nothing. I'm maybe a little tired, and you're kind of taking it personally. I mean, that's probably a silly example, but
I think that's good. I think that's part of the
idea
problem.
Of like kind of, that's how it's these filters in our brain that filters through our experience. So everything kind of goes through our experience. It's things happen, the way people say things to us, the tone of voice that they use in terms of the situation that we're in gets filtered through similar experiences. And so that's kind of what we're dealing with. And so that's why it's like, you have to recognize that we're all different in those. We have different experiences. We're not the same people. We have different experiences. We all experience events differently. So those are, common things that we typically, struggle with, is recognizing that.
Yeah. Well, I learned something. A new thought for me to think about is people with that tone, And then, yeah, there'd be times where even like I would just get anxiety. And then I'd start thinking about it. I was like, well, what do they think that I'm lazy? Do they think that I'm not doing a good job? Do they think like all these thoughts start coming? And yeah, that's so interesting.
Also, like if you're around that person's going to evoke a certain body experience. So you're going to be a little anxious in the body, or you're going to be a little nervous or whatever, because that person you expect to be shamed in those interactions.
Yeah.
Because that's, my association with being around this person is, so, think about like, have you ever been around somebody who's really negative all the time? Like just negative Nancy.
Yeah.
What's it like when you're around them?
Well,
Are you feeling comfortable and relaxed around them, or you're like, oh my gosh,
I'm thinking about more what I'm tense. I'm thinking about more what I'm going to say. And if I'm around them long enough, I feel drained because and especially if I'm in a group of people, I feel like I got to keep the peace.
Right.
So that they're not making the rest of the group feel uncomfortable.
Right. So you're that even before they've even before you've started the conversation, your brain is predicting that through those associations. And so it is reacting, it's getting stressed because you're like, oh man, this is going to be, this is the way it's going to be. And how many times have you ever had like, oh, I know this is going to go bad, and then it doesn't?
Oh yeah.
Because
you're just exhausted.
Where does that come from? Your brain is predicting based on previous experience of it's going to go bad.
Yeah.
Is
that why meditation or even taking thoughts captive or thinking, I don't know, like, or regulating helps your brain?
Sure.
Because a lot of times we want to demonize the brain and say the brain's bad, but really the brain's primary function is to help you.
Yeah, we just have to figure out how to use it. So how do we use it in the way it's intended to be used? Like, how do we take advantage of its power, of its ability and things like that?
Well, and part of that too is like even going on YouTube or finding different lecture or reading books on understanding the brain more.
Do you mean like watching some of our podcasts?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Like watching some. I just put the Resilient Purpose podcast has a lot lot of good content that you can go and watch.
I can't agree more. Like,
there's even one on breathing.
There is one on breathing. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's been really helpful for me because there's a quote that talks about how if we can name it, it's helpful to be able to name things, to be able to not leave things to like, I use the term mysticism, but like for me, learning about the association and with emotions and stuff makes me feel better because it doesn't make me feel like I'm a bad person. It just goes, oh, that makes sense why I would do that. Here's how I can put things in place to start changing my brain or start learning how to work with my brain better.
Well, and I think the part, going back to kind of Hussein's comment about like, what are things you could do to kind of make yourself less impulsive, more able to take a step back. Like that's the idea, is we're trying to reduce the amount of reactivity. So we want to pause. So oftentimes, like sometimes the simple thing is when something happens, take a deep breath. Like, okay, I got to take a deep breath. So that at least pauses and allows me to not do that first reactive thing, but to kind of stop myself and then say, okay, now I'm going to, try to respond in a way that makes a lot more sense. So,
okay. On to our next picture here. We're going to go to, your bad habits often serve as a survival function. When we understand the function of the behavior, we can start to find different ways to meet our needs. Thoughts on that, Doug?
Well, that's very true, Crystal. Is that who said that?
Yeah, it's Crystal.
We talk about this in trauma work, where it's the things that are maladaptive to us. So like the things that we feel are bad are actually adaptive for them. So for example, I give this example to teachers. If a kid is triggered in a classroom setting, highly overwhelmed and stressed, and a lot of times kids will run out of the classroom. And that's very maladaptive to the teacher, because then they have to go track that kid down. We don't know where they're going. I remember we worked in a school that was really close to a really neighboring kind of highly populated road that would be very dangerous. So, to the school's perspective, which makes complete sense, that's scary. So we don't want kids running out of the classroom because, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
Well, to the kid, it's very adaptive. I'm getting out of this stressful situation so I can calm down. I can regulate. So, I mean, that's kind of what they're saying. It's like our bad habits are very productive. The person who is addicted to a drug is oftentimes using that drug in response to a overwhelming situation. So then it gives them a lot of reward. It regulates them. You know, if I smoke pot, it regulates me, it calms me or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it becomes very adaptive to us, but then to everybody around them, it's maladaptive, right?
Yeah.
And so the key is helping find adaptive ways for others as well, like for it to be less maladaptive. Like, how can we find them an adaptive way to respond? So for example, oftentimes with kids in schools that like run out of classroom is, let's find you a safe place where we know you'll be for you to run to.
Okay.
So instead of chasing all over God's creation, we know that you're going to go to this chair outside of this room. And I'll tell them, you know, hey, you go there. I'm not going to chase after. I'm going to come later. I'm going to follow you, but I'm not going to chase after you and try to tackle you or anything. I'm just going to give you time in that space, but you need to be there. And then I'll come check on you and see how you're doing.
Wow.
And pretty much anytime we've done that, and there might be an exception, pretty much anytime we've done that, that's worked. Because what typically happens is I try to, you know, a teacher would try to stop that person. They'd step in front of them. They put their hands on them, and then now you're in a restraint because the kid starts fighting and everything like that. So it's finding, you know, healthier ways to, you know, let's turn your maladaptive thing into adaptive. What can mimic, you know, certain regulatory processes that this maladaptive thing does. So
yeah. Well, Doug, it also sounds too like hold on a minute. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, well, it also sounds too like, in terms of something that's been very helpful for me, is instead of looking at things as good or bad, looking at them as, is it helpful? So you saying giving that kid somewhere to run to, like a chair, that's like, we want the end goal to be to help this kid be regulated and feel safe and to be able to be in the classroom so he can connect with other students. But like you said, it's this good and bad view that we have of the world. And really what you're saying is, what the thing that you guys put in place is very helpful for him, for his experience. He needs, for whatever reason, to run somewhere.
Well, we always say that kids will tell you what they developmentally need through their behavior. So we'll see this oftentimes in, like, especially the really young classrooms like preschool or kindergarten, where there was this one preschool classroom where the teacher was talking about this kid who would just kind of, like, anytime they had to do something like really stationary, like where they had to sit and listen to a book, this kid's wanting to sprint around the room. You know, that kid is telling you they need to move more.
Oh, yeah.
But it's maladaptive because it's happening during a time where everybody's supposed to sit still. So it's like, unless you give that kid ample opportunity to move, run and do those things, they're going to do it in times where they can't, right? You know, so, you know, because it's, I'll give you an example. We got a new puppy, and he's about 16, and if my wife's still watching, we can laugh about this, but whenever he spends a lot of time in the crate, you know, because like maybe, you know, no one's there to be able to watch him and I have to go somewhere or whatever, and he gets out, man, he is a terror. He just like requires so much movement and energy, and he just is poorly behaved. Like, he just behaves awful. And so the only thing we can do is just, we just do our best to try to get him, you know, active and move to kind of regulate and get a balance. And I think that's the same for us humans. If we don't move, then, you know, and I always kind of, you know, we often end up paying for it in the end if we don't meet their needs, you know. So if we don't give kids what they need developmentally, they're going to seek it out some other way. So
why do you think, I mean, besides the obvious, but I think one thing that comes to my mind when you talk about that stuff, when we look at children and kids, why do we ascribe so much agency to them that they're running around, like the kid running around that needs movement? That kid's trying to tell you he needs movement. Why is it us as adults or humans look at that kid, and some of us will go, he's just wanting attention. He needs to be disciplined. We get upset, and we get like like he's wanting to do that on purpose. So what, like, but then when we look at an animal, we just, man, he's poorly behaved. Like, we need to put some things in place where, this is so perfect. Take the dog for a walk. Let the dog go out and run around.
Dogs don't have to sit through 6.5 hours of school. So they can, and, you know, they're certainly different, you know, beings, but they don't have to kind of go through the challenges that we put kids through. And I think if people learn more about how the brain works, they would believe less about the kids are just doing it on purpose. It's just that the brain just doesn't work that way. And actually, when I usually turn those situations on to those people that think that way, they go, yeah, I didn't do that on purpose. I was reacting to something. And so they recognize it about themselves, but typically that person is stirring up some negative feelings in us. And so then we try to make sense of it and come up with theories about it. And it helps our brain to know when we don't understand things that the kid's just doing it on purpose.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's just a matter of, I think that a lot of this is, we get a lot of these challenging behaviors because there's great variances in developmental maturity among many of our students. So they're not all developmentally at the same level. So every third grader is not developmentally a third grader. Every 12th grader is not developmentally a 12th grader. But the curriculums and the things we expect of them are geared towards the developmentally grade level.
As if they're all the same.
If they're all that same. So the kids that struggle developmentally fall further and further behind and really have a hard time. Then it's kind of like, I think, for some reason, I was talking to my staff today about this. The things that we do for kids when they're in the lower grades, like we play and they run around, they take naps, they do things that are really good for our brain, and we just stop doing that as they get older. As they get older, it's like, oh, these are no longer appropriate, when the brain still responds to those things. The things that we find to be regulating and helpful, and, learning and we're learning through play, learning through being active, learning through movement. Those are all things that are still true, and we're starting to come back to that. But I think in this pressure to be the best country in the world and the most, the top school and top educational system, America. We get so focused on beating everybody else in certain things that we're neglecting what kids really need. Yeah. Not saying that they should academics, but you can't do all or none. There has to be. Yeah. What I think is, like, oftentimes we just don't really think about what's helpful for our brain and what, I think the more we learn about it, the better we'll be. Yeah. And going back to this agency thing, like ascribing, like projecting on kids or projecting on teenagers. I was talking to or someone had left a comment on one of my posts this past week, and she was talking about how she deals with depression, anxiety, and ADHD, and also an eating disorder problem. And most of the time, she said what she gets from adults is she's just wanting attention. When she's depressed, she's just wanting attention. And it's like, but part of me is just like thinking, like even the eating disorder, she had mentioned that people are saying, well, she just developed that so that she'll get more attention from people. And I'm just like, how terrible is that to just say the only reason why she developed that is to get attention? Like, as if I would want to be depressed all the time. Right. Just to get people's attention. I want to starve myself because it's fun. It's a fun experience, but it's right? It really gets to me, Doug. But it's just like this stigma where that is just so unhealthy, and I don't even know if people are even thinking about what they're saying when they say that. Yeah. Is it just to shut down the conversation? Is it a simple fix for the brain? Like, it's just so frustrating that someone would say that to a teenager. So the question I would have is what is going on in this kid's life that they would choose to starve themselves or throw up for attention? Like, why would somebody choose to gain attention in such an extreme way? Same thing with self-harm. Why would somebody cut themselves or harm themselves in some way to get attention? Like, what's going on in their life to where they can't figure out attention in another way? There are a million ways to get attention. And I think it's like, have you really talked to the kid? about it? Have you really learned about what's going on? Because I guarantee if you are listening better and you take the time to listen and understand, you'll find out that it's not attention seeking. Now, they might need attention. Of course, we all need attention. Who doesn't need attention? How many people out there are like, I don't want, I don't like attention. I don't want attention. And we want people to be, we're social brains, so we want to feel connected. Yeah. And if I think that the only way to get attention is to do these really harmful things, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I got to figure out what that is. And then I would also say is if it's attention seeking, what does that do for ourselves in terms of helping? Like if I see, so if I think of someone, oh, they're just attention seeking, does that sound like an adult that wants to help? No, that's a frustrated, irritated adult who doesn't
disgusted.
I just want that kid out of my classroom. I just want that kid out of my program. I just don't want to deal with that. I want that kid out of my family. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, then why is that stirring so much stuff up in you? So I
be more reflective. Yeah.
What I think that more clearly says is, I have no idea why this kid's doing this, and I'm lost. But that's a really hard place to be lost. So if I can make this theory about it, then and then I would, let's look at at our worst, things that we've done at our worst. Was that because you were just seeking attention?
That's true. Yeah.
If you really looked at it, it's like, because why are you going? And we used to talk about and I think it's a lot of times because of our emotional development is, and going back to Paul Baker's stuff, challenging kids, traumatized kids would often choose the nuclear bomb first. Like that's their first line of defense. They go to their nuclear bomb instead of trying other things first. So we often go to really extreme responses because we're more impulsive, we're more reactive, we're more dysregulated. And so we don't have, think about it, our brain isn't fully mature, and this is more of the cortex, not fully maturing until, late 20s. So that means that we're very immature for a long period of time. Think about compare yourself. And I don't know. I can do it better than you two, like you and Kaylee. But like me being young 20s compared to me being 40s is a lot different. Yeah. I get less concerned about things, related to how I'll look to other people, or I can set boundaries better. I can say no to things better. Those type of things.
Well, also too, like going back to the attention seeking, when talking about association, like why do you think it is that, like, of all the things that you could say, let's say stigma, of all the things you could say to someone who's acting out, why is it that saying they just want attention, why is that so negative? Why do we see as attention seeking so negatively? So like if someone's acting out, I'm going, they just want attention. What would make me choose to say attention and not they're just a bad person, or they're...
Well, I think they're applying an intention to the behavior. So I'm intentionally doing something
because it's all about me, or like selfish. Like what is behind the attention for stigma?
I think we're trying to understand why this kid is doing something that is disrupting something with what I'm trying to do. So if I'm trying to teach a lesson, if I'm trying to get them to pick up their room or whatever, and they're not doing it, or they're acting, I'm just trying, our brain tries to make sense of things. So it's a very easy reason, because, and I go back to, the problems kids cause are not the cause of their problems. So because it causes disruption in us, we think that they're doing it on purpose, in which attention seeking really assumes that they're doing it on purpose.
Oh yeah.
So I think that they're purposely, it'd be very similar to, he's just trying to, tick me off or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and I find, for me at least, when I'm very dysregulated, everything becomes very personal to me. Like when someone cuts you off in traffic, it's like they knew I was late to that meeting. They knew, just like the universe is out to get me.
Well, I mean, like today, like all of Marietta decided to go against me getting here on time. So they lined up on 3rd Street. They had a truck, an 18-wheeler, break down because because I had to get somewhere by a certain time, and so I arrived late.
They didn't want us to have
They
this
did
live
not want.
stream.
I know, and I was really like, why is that trucker not wanting to listen to that live stream?
Exactly. Wow.
So I mean, and everybody. I mean, all of Marietta participated. They all kind of got in the way.
Yeah.
So I mean, no, I mean, yeah, like we come up with these, very emotional, but when I'm dysregulated, when I'm not thinking, when I'm like, that's when I'm reactively thinking. I'm not, my cognitive thinking is not abstract and thoughtful and creative. It's very reactive. It's reflexive.
Yeah.
So if I feel threatened, then my theories are going to be centered around feeling threatened. So you're doing it on purpose. You're conspiring against me. Because my brain is feeling threatened by the situation. I'm late to get to my appointment. I can't get through my academic lesson. All these things. So
yeah. Well, very good. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. I think this one, I have a bunch of quotes, and so I'm just trying to mesh them together with what we're talking about. So here's the next one, and I'm going to read this to you, Doug.
We should get more comments.
Yeah, we should. I wish we would. So here we go. Your pain is only annoying to those who are disconnected from their own. Your grief is only palatable in small doses to those who have never experienced drowning in theirs. That is no fault to you. Keep talking about it. Keep sharing. Keep healing. Keep going.
Yeah. Can you throw that up again?
Yeah.
So I think... I think trying to take complex things and really simplifying it into these types of quotes are really challenging, because what can be overwhelming, I mean, think about it. Like if I came to you and said, I am thinking of harming myself or I want to take my life, that would be overwhelming for anybody. It's overwhelming for staff, even though they've been trained, so I go back to knowing who your supports are, what they're good at, and who are the appropriate people to be having these conversations with. Like, I should go, if I have this immense pain and suffering, I should not be unloading that on my friends, unless there's been some type of prearrangement that they're willing to listen and are good at helping us. I think we got to be careful that we kind of almost have to kind of check and say, hey, I really think you're a good listener. I would really like it if I could kind of talk about things with you. Is that okay? I mean, that might sound corny, but it's kind of like, was this kind of scheduled, Like I have scheduled therapy sessions, like I know when you're coming and I know when you're going to talk to me about stuff. So I can be prepared. I can, know what I'm working with and things like that. So what I would say, yes, we want you to keep talking and keep going and keep moving, but let's make sure we find the right supports for you and who are the right people to accomplish. So one of the things we're in developing this wellness pack that we're trying to put out is, there's probably a friend that makes you laugh hysterically. Go to that person to make you laugh when you're in a bad mood. There's probably a person that is a good listener. Go to that person for those situations. There's probably a friend that just loves to work out and you want to work out together, go work out. Yeah. Like finding people that really do a good job at certain things and go to them. But we get offended by how people are reacting, and we're not thinking that, maybe that person wasn't prepared for that type of interaction. Maybe they don't know what to do. And it doesn't mean that person, even though they reacted negatively, meant or feels that way. It just means that they got overwhelmed and struggle with it. We all kind of are human and struggle with things. Yeah, because
we did this with another quote too, and it's always interesting how what your take is from a more balanced view. I guess because I'm associating with this with shame is that whenever people would see, even recently, last year, for instance, going through some certain things and just how people responded to me, and it was like, you're assigning things to me that I meant it this way, but you're not seeing that I'm hurting. Yeah. And it's like they're not even giving me a chance to speak up or say something. And so when I hear your pain is only annoying to those who are disconnected from their own. So if someone isn't comfortable with a certain emotion in themselves, I mean, is that
Well,
why
and
they're-
I would almost disagree. So what if it's not that maybe I'm necessarily disconnected, or I am connected to my own emotions in a certain way that doesn't match up with the way you
okay.
process your information, right? So like,
So maybe change that to like how you process instead of, because we're a little bit maybe assigning agency to this, is that
So-
they just must be disconnected.
many people have probably had that experience where it's like you're expressing something about something, and then that person through their own lens says, you know what you need to do? You need to do this. And you're like, no, I'm not doing that. That's not going to work. That's stupid. But that's what works for them. You know, so we oftentimes, you know, it goes back to sometimes we just need people to listen and not try to problem solve and comment and things like that. So
Yeah. That's really interesting, Doug. I never thought of it like that. Yeah. That,
I like to shake it up a little bit.
you like to shake it up. That's shake it up.
Shake it up.
Okay.
Taylor Swift.
Again, if you guys please comment below, let us know. Oh, hold on a minute. I'm going to bring up another quote here. Let us know what you guys are thinking. We're very curious about that. Doug, I have another one.
How about the if they could comment something around the lines of what's their favorite thing to do to help themselves feel better, even if it's just a little bit better. Like, what is something that they do that they like to do that helps them feel a little bit better?
Typing it in right now. Feel better. Here we go.
To be curious to see what people like to do.
Yeah. Well, let's I can answer that. I like, weirdly enough, I like creating things. Creating things makes me feel more in control. It makes me feel better. Makes me feel more powerful in a way, like more in control. So doing these videos, working with you guys, oftentimes where you're like, why is Tyler uploading things to Frame.io at like
2 in the morning?
2 in the morning? It's like, well, and trying to find balance in that, of course. But it's that, and I also, and live streams have been a lot of fun too, connecting with people for that.
Yeah.
So those types of interactions and tech and putting things together and making them work a certain way. So that would probably be something that I do that makes me feel better when I feel like I'm out of control. What about you?
So I like to play hockey. So when I lived in Cincinnati for a few years, they had 2 ice rinks within like a mile of each other. So I was playing like 2 or 3 times a week. So we don't really have that here. So we play floor hockey. Now COVID has ruined that, so we haven't been able to play hockey in a while, but we used to play every Saturday, and that would release everything for the week. It was a lot of fun. And I know there's a couple friends hopefully that are listening out there that would kind of relate to that, that I play hockey with, but we just haven't been able to do that in a really long time. So, I mean, any sort of move. I like exercise to a certain degree. Like going for walks, listening to music. Those are all things that kind of help me feel better. But I also, I mean, one person might call it a workaholic. The other side would say, you know, I like doing good work.
Yeah.
So that can be rewarding, but at the same time it can be stressful. But sometimes I can dive into work. To help feel better, like, and not instead of like the mundane part of work, but like the creative stuff, like the things that like kind of similar to what you're talking about. So writing or creating, training or those type of things.
Do you get as much out of learning when you're
Absolutely.
like listening to Bruce Perry? Do you feel good too?
Yeah.
Does that make you?
Oh yeah, nothing like a conference or a webinar or something like that to rejuvenate you. So I used to get to go to conferences a lot earlier in my career, and those would, oh my gosh, you'd come back so just motivated and things like that. So
because you're, connecting with people that are like-minded, and you're learning things, and
right. And you get new information, or you get to share. Sometimes I would present at conferences, so I get to share. Travel. I used to love travel.
Yeah.
So like going visiting places, seeing different cities and stuff. Like we went to Massachusetts a couple years, Boston a couple years, the whole family for training that I went to. Yeah. And go to a Red Sox game. So going to a sporting event, things like that. Those
absolutely.
are all.
That
So
would be
a
lot
lot
of
of things. This is why things are tough.
Yeah.
My youngest said playing with my puppy. So.
Yeah, so Janie put down, Lily, listen to music and sing.
Yes, she. If you want to listen to Hamilton from an 11-year-old, just listen to my daughter Lily. She loves Hamilton.
Wow, that's awesome.
And she knows the words like crazy. I don't understand how she does
Yeah.
it.
Wow. Some of them that'd be
It's
pretty
really
impressive.
fast. It's really fast. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? What? You know, so it's actually quite entertaining to drive in a car with Hamilton blasting and her rapping along with it.
Yeah. So then Jenny put down Lainey kick a ball.
Yeah. So soccer, we're getting ready for soccer season. So
Okay.
That'll be good. She likes soccer. So
Yeah. That's interesting that it's like kick a ball. So like soccer. So has she explained to you why she likes that? Or is it just something where she's just mentioned that she likes it?
she just likes it. And
Yeah.
shooting baskets, I would say that Lainey a lot of times likes to play basketball. So we shoot hoops outside a lot. And so she enjoys that.
Yeah. And then is it your youngest, Livy?
Livy, yeah.
Livy, play with my puppy.
Yes. And horses. So she takes horse lessons. So she rides horses and she plays with horses. And so I would say playing with the puppy, yes, but playing with horses, that would be tops. Yeah.
Nice.
So.
And then we have another comment from Andy. Andy, thank you for your comment. Andy says, to make myself feel better, obtainable tasks, whether that be easy or hard, and playing video games.
What's your favorite video game?
Yeah. What's your favorite video game, Andy?
So my wife bought me this Oculus. So it's like this virtual reality thing. And so I was playing like ping pong, and then there's like a mountain climbing one.
Yeah.
And that is just fantastic. It is so cool. So if anybody wants an Oculus, I suggest going to give it.
There's some type of a like Beat Saber, but you know what Beat Saber is?
Yep.
Jordan and I, my girlfriend and I, we play that all the time. I love it so much. It's so rhythmic. And I'll play one song over and over. And it's like how, if you play some of the harder levels, your body is in such rhythm.
So you're combining a couple things: exercise because you're moving your body, and then rhythm to the music in your body and the coordinated, effort. And then Vader Immortal, so playing lights, being a Jedi alongside of Darth Vader, that's pretty fun. So they're just that's a fun time. So you gotta figure out how to cope in COVID times. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you, Janie.
Yeah, Andy, let us know what video game. And does your wife like to play video games? Does she play all the time, or what's that like?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if she said gamer, but.
Oh man. Well, I know we wanted to be done around 2:30, so thank you guys for joining us today. Again, through the week, follow us on Instagram, the Resilient Purpose Podcast, YouTube, direct message, even the Facebook page, Life and Purpose Behavioral Health. We do this to connect with you guys, and this is really, would you view this as like this is a resource for people to be able to jump on and to answer questions and really. And I'd like to ask you this question too, Doug, but whenever I had met you guys and started helping you with doing videos and creating content and stuff, one thing that I really found purpose in is that there's just not a lot of media locally that is giving this type of information. And I've just learned so much with mental health. And so I think it's a great resource, not only for people online, but for our community.
Yeah. That was, I know that's the feedback we've been getting from people in the community, which we've really appreciated, is that there isn't that. And I would imagine that, a lot of people, people don't have to have intense mental health problems to benefit from these things. Yeah. These segments and live streams and stuff like that. So I just hope that, people will, connect and we would love to definitely hear from people. I think that makes it more fun for us. I hope it would also make it more engaging and fun for everybody else. Yeah. And I know that we'll get there. And I love as far as with comments and stuff. Today's been great. Andy says that is a tough one, even though the wife doesn't approve. I would have to say Final Fantasy as a kid, but now as I'm older, it's more the strategy type games. Interesting. Yeah. See, I had PlayStations and Nintendos growing up, and so it was always like Madden, NHL hockey. Occasionally it would be like Mario Brothers or Mike Tyson's Punch Out. So Tecmo Bowl and things like that. Those were fun. Legend of Zelda. But I never got into the strategy games, but the sports and active ping pong in my virtual reality world is really fantastic because it just is. Yeah, Andy, I would say for video games, like
The strategy ones aren't my best. They kind of get boring to me quick. I remember I loved Nintendo 64 growing up, and I played the Donkey Kong 64. Great game. I got to a certain boss and I couldn't beat it. Man, did I have anger issues. I'd throw the controller. I would get so upset. And my younger brother, Logan, he's 4 years younger than me, beat it. And he got through it all, and he loves those type of games. And I'm just like, and I was like, how did you beat it?
I wish I could find this video clip. I used to have it. We used to play all these like funny YouTube video clips on trainings, but there's this one clip where this kid's playing a video game downstairs, and his brother, I think it's his younger brother, is upstairs messing with him, like able to play the game, or it's like kind of like an online game. And then she's like, "What are you doing?" He's like screaming and yelling. And it's like, "You gotta be kidding me!" And this kid's laughing hysterically up there.
Oh my god!
I think it just people get so emotional about those things.
Oh yeah, you get so into it, and like even now, like if I'm playing certain games. But yeah, Andy, thank you for the comment. Even though your wife doesn't approve, I approve. I don't know. So, but yeah, again, guys, let's talk a little bit about, before we go off, let's talk about this week's episode on the Resilient Purpose, a special episode.
So I am only in the intro. I am not in it at all. So that's going to be really sad for a lot of people, I'm sure. But no, Janice, who is our director of clinical services, is having a very candid conversation with Tim Kraft, who is the founder of High and Hope and Reach United Church, and he certainly has a mission towards addiction recovery, but he takes it from a spiritual perspective. And so one of the things, and we've talked about this before, where you see these siloed situations where you can only get treatment for recovery, or you can only go to God for recovery, and not seeing the benefit of both. And so this is a really good conversation, blending two sides of the coin and making addiction recovery less siloed and making it more of a blended interactive kind of process. So being able to do both, kind of speaking to those folks that say, oh, you can only do this, or it's not good to, no, everybody is allowed to kind of have multiple ways to heal.
Yeah.
And so in fact, there's probably a benefit to having more, so you heal better or more effectively by multiple means.
Just like you were talking about, as far as having a friend group, go to the one friend that makes you laugh when you're down. Right. Go to the one friend that's calm when you're...
Yeah, if you only I'm only gonna have one good friend and that's it, then you're putting all your eggs in one basket. Yeah. And so that's not a healthy thing. So find your resources, find multiple ways to heal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's great. Thursday, and then we have some really good opportunities for filming this week. We get to meet Tim Anderson, who wrote a book called Becoming Bulletproof, and is the founder of Original Strength, and his co-founder Danny Almeida are going to be joining us Wednesday to talk about pressing reset and its value both in their world of movement and exercise, and in our world of mental health. So I'm so excited because we've started to collaborate on some projects, and I'm looking forward to that. So
yeah, nice. I'm excited too. Excited to learn. I've learned a lot from filming and editing a lot of these videos. And so, guys, again, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. We're everywhere. If you are working and you like to listen to podcasts throughout the day and not watch, you can find us on those platforms. And then if you want to watch, we put out videos on our YouTube channel. We also put out snippets that we take from the full episodes. And so thank you again, guys, for joining us. We're going to be doing more of these, and we're actually having another live stream coming up. I won't give too much away, but I'd be expecting it on Wednesday, which is going to be really nice. And so again, we do this for you guys. We do this to get questions. We do this to get interactions. And so if you have any of those, please message us. Anything else to say?
I don't know. Did we say to share and do all that fun stuff?
No, I did not.
So we should share, spread the word.
Yes.
Let's get more people engaged. And if you like what we're doing and you like our podcast, go to places like Apple and do a 5-star review. And if
Yes.
you don't like what you're doing, just go back to your life and don't review. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm hoping everybody likes it, but reviews would be great. It would help. I mean, we're really trying to grow this and build on this and just make ourselves more reachable. And like, for example, we've reached out, just to kind of tell you how this works. I think we reach out to people to be guests and things like that. And you know, the smaller we are, the less we're able to get.
Yeah.
You know, we've been lucky in getting some really great people, but we want to continue to expand on that.
Yeah.
We also want to reach more people because we think that what we're doing is important to the world and the community. And so I think that we should have more of this out there. Right now, you know, I think we can do a lot of good. So 5-star reviews, maybe say something nice.
Yeah, it helps the algorithms. And what you were saying to that fact, Doug, is that the more we talk about it, the more mental health is in someone's news feed or on Instagram or YouTube, or they're listening to it, the more we normalize mental health, the more we normalize these different things, so people aren't so disenchanted or afraid to seek out help.
Yeah.
And we can normalize it more if more people can speak up and say, hey, I deal with this too. Because most often than not, if you speak up, there's going to be other people that are going to go, I feel what you're saying, or I agree with you, or I connect with you on that.
So, and then the other thing is if you're a business, and I know it's a tough time in the world, and you know, some businesses are struggling and some businesses are thriving. But if you're a business that cares about mental health and addiction recovery, and you want to sponsor an episode or a segment, we would really appreciate it. And you know, to be transparent, we use that money to make our product better. It's not just to kind of go in our pockets, but we use it to really build on our platform.
And to boost. To get it out there.
To get it out there. So we've had some great sponsorships, All Pro Nutrition, Memorial Health System. We're gonna future episode from People's Bank, and you know, so we've gotten some really generous people out there. So we're hoping that we can get more. So we can show you all the analytics and let you know kind of what the reach is, but that would also help. So you know, being able to do those reviews and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys. Those that have been like really awesome supporters and just through the beginning to the end, and just sharing your words to us has been awesome. So it makes me feel warm and fuzzy, and so I appreciate that. Yeah,
especially at Joe Mama's Kitchen, reaching out to us and telling us.
And Jackson Patterson has been really a great supporter, and we love what he's doing over at Main Street West and stuff like that. So if anybody is interested, to check him out. So it's great stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys again, and we will be live again this Wednesday, and we have a new podcast coming out, episode with Janice and Tim, this Thursday as well. So please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this content, and we'll see you guys soon.